So now we have talked about what discipline is and why we do it. But let's be real. This is the question every parent is asking. Okay, but what do I actually do, Tina? Because in the moment when your child is doing the most, when you're tired, when you have already repeated yourself, you don't need theory. You need tools, baby. Mommy, daddy, you need tools. So today we are going to make this very practical. Not perfect, not unrealistic, but real tools you can actually use. So start here. Before any tool work, before I give you strategies, I need you to understand this one thing. Discipline doesn't start with your child. It starts with you. Because how you show up in the moment shapes everything that happens next. So if you're overwhelmed, reactive, or frustrated, even the right strategy won't land properly. So sometimes the first step in discipline is not correcting your child, it's regulating yourself. And I know that's not always easy. Trust me, but it matters because a calm parent can teach. A reactive parent usually just controls the moment. There's no listening happen, right? So let's go. A lot of discipline issues come from this one thing. We expect children to know what we have never clearly taught. We say things like, you should know better. What is better? I've told you already. What have you told me? But knowing once is not the same as understanding and applying consequence consistently. Talk through, mommy, daddy. When we went to school, did we only learn the concept once and got it? No. It had to be taught over and over before we got it. So discipline sometimes look like slowing down and saying, let me show you what this should look like. It feels simple, but it prevents a lot of repeated behavior. So discipline, you need to slow down and go, let me show you what this should look like. Because it will help to prevent a lot of repeated behavior. So let's talk about consequences because, in a way, that actually teaches. Not all consequences are equal, though. Some just punish, others teach. A natural consequence is what happens on its own. A logical consequence is something you put in place that connects to the behavior. Natural consequence, what happens on its own. Logical consequence, something put in place that connects to the behavior. So instead of a random punishment, you want consequences that make sense. Not to hurt the child, but to help them understand. So because the consequence doesn't connect, we have issues. But when a consequence connects to the behavior, the lesson sticks better. An example of a natural consequence would be something like a child going into a swing. You say, don't swing so high because you will fall out the swing. You swing high, you fall out the swing, you get hurt. Natural consequence, what happens on its own. A logical consequence is something that you put into place. So, uh, curfew is 9. You can go out with your friends, but don't come back after 9 o'clock. After 9 o'clock, you won't be able to go with your friends again because you did not um, adhere to the curfew. So they go and they come back 10 or 9:30 or 9:15, give or take 15 minutes, right? Next week, when they ask to go out with their friends again, you have to know that something you put in place was you won't go with your friends again next week because you came home after 9. Natural consequence. So the correction, it has to teach. Yeah. This is where a lot of parents get stuck. We correct the behavior, but we don't teach what to do instead. So it sounds like, don't come back late. You have to give them a time. Come back at 9. Don't do that. Stop swinging so high. But then what? Discipline has to include teaching. So after you correct, you guide. What should you do instead? Let's try that again. So I said, don't swing high, you'll fall out. The swing. So I tell you what not to do, what the behavior is, and I also say, what should you do instead? Swing slower or lower. Because if you don't give an alternative, the child goes right back to what they know. Because this is what they know. This is a behavior that they have learned over their 10, 12, 15, 17 years. So with younger children especially, you don't always need a long explanation. You need direction, especially for them. They are impulsive and they're still learning. So sometimes discipline looks like not this, do this instead. Simple, clear, immediate. That's the redirection that they need. And it's one of the most underused tools. Children don't learn from what you say. They learn from what you repeat. Let me repeat that. Children don't just learn from what you say, they learn from what you repeat. So, if something is a rule today, but that same rule is ignored tomorrow, it becomes confusing. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. What it does mean is if this is the boundary, B is for boundary, it stays the boundary because consistency builds security, it builds understanding, and it builds predictability. And all of that supports better behavior. So let's bring this together. When you look at all these tools, you're teaching, you're guiding, you're redirecting, and you're using connected consequences, you start to see something clearly. These are the things that actually builds skills in your child. And this is why physical discipline on its own falls short. Because what does physical discipline teach? Pain, fear. Because it may stop the behavior, but it doesn't walk the child through what to do instead. No teaching how to think, no guiding how to regulate, no redirecting. So again, it's not about shaming parents. It's about expanding your tools. Because your child needs more than one way to learn. To be honest, we need more than one way to learn. So what says a child? Let me make this simple. If your child hits, you stop it, yes, but then you teach. We use our hands for helping, not hurting. If your child refuses to listen, you don't just repeat louder. You get closer, you guide, you make the expectation clear. If your teen crosses a boundary, there is a consequence, but there's also a conversation. Because discipline is always both correction plus teaching. Let me ask you this. When your child makes a mistake, do they leave that moment knowing what to do differently or just knowing they got in trouble? Leave it in the comments because those lead to very different outcomes. Discipline is not about having one perfect method. It's about having the right tools for the moment and using them in a way that actually teaches. What is it supposed to be teaching? Teaching, guiding, redirecting, and connecting consequences. It's supposed to be teaching them something that is going to take them into their future. Next, we're going to talk about something parents don't always think about: when and where to discipline. I used to get disciplined anywhere. Because time and environment matters. They matter more than we realize. We're not just raising children who behave. We're raising children who learn how, who grow, and who develop. And that happens in how we discipline. So next week, week 3, we are going to be taking charge of how, where, and when we discipline. Because mommy, daddy, sometimes we discipline in the moment. It's necessary, but that's not always the right way. Stay blessed. Share the series with someone. Remember to answer the questions in the comment because we really want to know, do they leave that moment knowing what to do differently or knowing they got in trouble? Think about it, mommy, daddy. This parenting thing is a little bit challenging, but every day, every Thursday, we are here working together to make it a little less difficult. If you want to connect with me, go to my website, tinafernandez.com. Send me a request, and we will have a free consultation where we will talk and just let out and breathe, mommy, daddy, because our community is growing and we need each other. We need our village. We need our safe space. Stay blessed.